Hey, buddy, welcome back. It is the 7 o'clock hour on News Radio, 830 KHVH. Telephone number 521-8383, and your calls always take precedent when we get together during the SHOPO Hour. And delighted that we have the fellas in studio with us today. Brother Bobby has some time off, but Brother Nick is in studio today. And Nick, good morning to you.
Morning, sir. Thanks for having us back.
It is a pleasure to see you. I noticed that you put up a plexiglass shield between you and Keo. Is that...
My doctor recommended it.
Oh, how true, how true. Thank you, Nick. Good morning. Brother Steve.
Rick, always happy and grateful to be here with you and your listeners. I appreciate your enthusiasm. It must be the monster and your sweet celebration grapes.
Wow.
That's 200 grams of sugar. Be all set.
Listen, I don't say...
With the plexiglass.
I don't report back when you're making sausage at home of what the ingredients are. So, well, you've revealed my morning breakfast.
Delicious.
Delicious. I'll be dead in the next 20 minutes from the sugar content. Brother Mark Criccio, good morning.
Morning, Rick, Nick, Steve. Happy Monday, everybody.
It is a happy
Good to
Monday.
be back.
Golly, gee, I love this. Steve, I'm going to start with you. The mission of the SHOPO Hour, what do we hope to accomplish?
Sure. Rick, the main priority here at the SHOPO Hour is we try to come together with you and your listeners and really create a bond and a connection between the law enforcement professionals that wear the uniform in the different counties and the communities that we feel fortunate to serve. It gives us an opportunity, too, to have robust discussion about topics related to public safety, law enforcement, recently legislative bills that could possibly make our communities not as safe as they should be, and take any questions that the community, your listeners, might have regarding anything law enforcement. And we appreciate being here.
No, it's a delight. Brother Nick, I'd like to get your take as well. What have we gleaned so far with this program from your perspective?
Oh, it's been a great time. Thank you. Yeah. Always eager to take questions and calls from the listeners, and also just propone SHOPO as a labor advocacy group for law enforcement here in the state.
Mm-hmm. And Brother Mark, I'll toss it to you as retired Major HPD.
Yeah, so Rick, I got to thank you for giving us this platform because it gives us a chance to tell the other side of the story. It's not one-sided anymore. So we thank you for this opportunity.
I appreciate it very much. Yeah. And by the way, we have some of that we'll chat about today. But as all three gentlemen mentioned, they really are looking forward to your calls at 521-8383. And be sure and give us a call, and we'll get you right on board with the SHOPO Hour. There's a story that emanated, and this is just the headline, and that's why I wanted to share it with you. Probe ongoing in 10 likely felony charges regarding HPD officers. So that was the headline on Hawaii Free Press. And that's why I wanted to chat with you about it, because as I read a little bit deeper into the story, whenever you see felonies in a headline associated with public figures or service, you think, oh my gosh, felony, it must have been, what a violation. And then we take a look. Of the 10, 7 were misdemeanors and 3 were Class C felonies. And yes, still allegations and charges, but I found it to be a little inflammatory in the way that it was presented. I'll turn to Steve and Nick first with SHOPO. Your thoughts about this story?
Well, we've said that, the media is going to do a catchphrase or something to get the reader's attention. If I'm recalling this article correctly, Rick, it wasn't going in back like 7 or 8 years or something like that. It was a cumulative total.
I did not see that part, but I'll take your word.
Okay. At SHOPO, what we advocate for is for our members that get due process. And we've said this many times before that we believe in transparency. We want to be transparent. We want to make sure that our members are afforded the appropriate process when it comes to discipline, and that whatever the different county law enforcement leadership feel is appropriate, that it follows the contract specifically. Nick, did you want to add to that?
Well, I mean, it's always unfortunate when police officers are in the media in just like that under those kinds of terms. But at the same time, I mean, if it is salacious, if it is unfounded, I think that's even worse than an officer doing something wrong, is misrepresenting law enforcement in that capacity.
The information is gleaned from the 2022 Legislative Disciplinary Report. And so that's where these particular cases are ensconced and why we're, hearing these stories. The chief had mentioned in weeks past that he recently discovered that he doesn't have the authority to make an immediate termination or suspension or things along that. I'll stay with termination because that was a story on the mainland regarding the police officers there. Can you share what type of process is undertaken when there is a story that is in line with these?
Sure. So the internal investigative apparatus in the Honolulu Police Department, Professional Standards Office, which is commonly referred to as Internal Affairs, it's a very thorough institution within the department. They do very in-depth investigations. They're very detail-oriented. It's kind of a misnomer that the chief of police can't immediately address a problem. Within our contract, there are provisions actually for the department to suspend you without pay for 30 days and then extend it beyond that for whatever the circumstance may be. The chief of police saying, I can't necessarily address it. I suppose there's a little bit of merit to it, but can he immediately terminate? No, that's true.
And I think that was the context in his statement.
I think, Rick, I'll tell you this. Nobody hates bad cops more than good cops. Let's put that out there.
Right.
But I think we want to take a step back, that when we talk about somebody given the ability to immediately terminate someone else, maybe emotions get more involved than the actual process. I think we need to be careful here. And clearly what we saw in Memphis and certain things where clearly there was violations done, we don't want to forget a due process of events. Rather than coming in quickly and making fast judgments that may or may not be accurate, I think we need to respect the process and go with that. The chief is the leader of the department. He is correct in that he can't immediately terminate someone's employment right then and there. But as Nick was saying, okay, there are steps that the officer can be removed from duty. There are disciplinary things that can be done. And then, as Nick was saying, our professional standards office can get involved. I think it's important for the public to understand that just because an officer is not immediately terminated does not mean that a thorough investigation would be completed, following up with if it was deemed to be terminable offense, then that's going to happen. Now, whether it happens 3 days after the event or several months after the event, the cause could still happen. But I think there needs to be a little bit of, let's slow down, let's do the investigation, let's put everything together, because remember, you have to respect the process. Because how's this? What if somebody is fired unjustly? What if you give so much power to one individual that this individual makes a decision and it's not the right call? Then what's happened on the back end?
Lawsuit.
Right. So again,
a consequence.
Right.
I think I'm going to turn to Mark here in a moment. There's two things, at least from my side, is that one, we need to be reminded, innocent until proven guilty. That's the standard that we apply to all citizens.
Correct.
And should be to our officers as well.
Correct.
Mark, I'm going to jump over to you.
Yeah, so
I'll finish my thoughts.
Like Steve and Nick were saying, there's a due process. And then I felt bad for Chief Joe on this one, because when he was in front of the police commission, they grilled him on this, right? And if they did their due diligence, they could have went on to a different topic and not have to waste time at that meeting, and they would have known that he doesn't have the authority to just fire somebody, right? So are they showboating for the public? Like, what is the police commission doing? So they were out of line grilling him for that at that meeting, because I saw that. So again, there's a due process, right? He has the right to suspend someone, take away their police powers, which he does, right? Until the investigation is complete and there's no lawsuits later on. It's done properly. But the police commission should have known that. and shame on them.
Okay. Nick?
Yeah, I have to agree with the Major. I was kind of shocked to see that police commission hearing as well. And the reason why is because all law enforcement officers in the Honolulu Police Department know that the police commission investigates allegations of police officer misconduct. We all have to carry the contact information for the police commission in our pocket on duty 24/7. If we're asked for it by a civilian, we have to provide it, and we have to give them instructions on how to make a complaint. So for 7 people to sit there and grill the chief of police and say, well, why can't you? Well, how come? Well, we don't understand. These commissioners review those complaints. They have investigators who work for them that receive the complaints. They do a thorough investigation, and the commissioners read all of that information. And whether or not it's passed on to HPD for further review, evaluation, or investigation is another story. But, it's pretty shocking to see these people who are responsible for the chief of police and many of the department's operations to be asking so many questions.
Yeah.
They should know better.
I would like to say just one thing. We can take a break, and that is I'll call on my media partners, is that when there is a blaring headline or exhaustive coverage, when an allegation is put forth against an officer or in any public forum, there needs to be a similar amount of coverage when there's an exoneration, when there is a conclusion, either way, but we need to have balance. If you're going to report this, then you got to report that. And that's all I'm asking
Absolutely.
in media today. The gentleman will be back with us in a moment. Got to take a short break. We'll take your calls at 521-8383. We return. Welcome back, 521-8383. We'll go to listener calls in a moment. But I want to toss it back over to Steve because there's to expand on what we left with, you have a perspective that is unique.
Yeah, Rick, when you had said that, when officers are accused of something, it becomes front page. And then when it turns out that allegation is false or unfounded, usually there's very minimal follow-up. And I couldn't help but think about the situation that Bobby and I were in, where we were charged with extortion. That was, I believe, front page of the paper. And then when the Attorney General of Hawaii declined to do anything with the case, I think that paragraph was somewhere back near the, the comics. It wasn't front page.
Yeah, it wasn't
front page.
It was far back.
And I have no problem. Listen, we want the community to be informed. Journalists have a job to do. But to your point, if they're going to report something, follow up on the back end would be much appreciated, especially when it involves topics of law enforcement or possible police misconduct. And it turns out that there was no misconduct or, criminal activity like that, not just in this case, but in general. It's important. And thank you for putting that message out, Rick.
No, it was a pleasure. And I'm prayerful that there will be that type of adjustment and coverage. We want to go to our friends online, 521-8383. As a matter of fact, we're going to start with Chad right here in Honolulu. Chad, thank you for your call. You are on the SHOPO Hour. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, Rick. Good morning, guys. I had a question regarding concealed carry.
Sure.
The mayor, they have certain restrictions as to, even if you do have a concealed carry permit, you cannot bring, as a citizen, you cannot bring your gun into certain areas. Like, I believe it was like schools, churches, hospitals.
It's pretty much everywhere, to be honest with you. Yeah.
So it kind of defeats the purpose of having the concealed carry because, as you know, the bad guys, they don't follow those rules. Yeah. So, and on the mainland, and I believe in Texas, in certain states, there's documented active shooter cases where the threat was stopped because someone had a gun with them to stop the threat. So, just wanted to know what's SHOPO's position, on this restriction about concealed carry.
Appreciate the call, Chad, and thank you very much. As a matter of fact, there is also a state in the legislature, a bill that deals with the same. Who'd like to jump in?
Well, going to back, we discussed this before. So, the city council.
He did ask
Yeah.
SHOPO's position, but I want to get
Oh,
your
okay.
No,
You guys
no,
wanna-
but I do want to get your take though.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, the last few readings, right, with this safe zones that they want to call it, there was an overwhelming majority that testified that were against these safe zones, but the city council still went and passed it. So I don't know what reading it's on, so it's moving forward.
It's on second reading. That was second.
So
Goes
it's moving
to a
forward.
third.
So clearly they're not listening to the people that are testifying, right? So and then so they have their own little agenda. They want to make these little safe zones, but it's Supreme Court ruling. It's going to get shot down. Other states, they lost, right, with these little safe zones because if it goes to the Supreme Court, because you have a right to carry. So let me bring something up that someone brought my attention to the other day. There's millions and millions responsible gun owners out there with trillions of rounds of ammo. Okay? If they were a problem, you'd know about it. Okay? They're not the problem. It's the guys the criminals that don't care. That's your problem. It's not the people that are illegally allowed to have these weapons. So,
Yeah.
Sure.
Steve?
Rick, as a labor union that represents the men and women that wear the uniform countywide, our position is we want to make sure then that our members, our officers that go out and serve the community every day, understand then what is, especially in Honolulu, is this going to be an ordinance? Is this going to be a law? How is it going to be enforced? Because obviously if we create these safe spaces, clearly there's going to be some type of, let's say, we'll call it a punishment if you violate that. So from a SHOPO standpoint, we want to make sure then that our members, our officers that are going out there that may respond to these calls, that we know exactly is this going to be an RO? Is this going to be a crime statute? What are we going to do in terms of enforcement? So as far as that goes, that's SHOPO's interest in this is how are our members going to perform their job safely, effectively, in these environments when these safe spaces are created. Stepping out of SHOPO and just being a member of the community. Listen, I heard Mayor Rick. I heard him on his show. One thing I appreciate about Mayor Rick is he's straightforward. There's no gray area with Mayor Rick. He pretty much it is what it is. And as the leader of the city, he flat out said, and I don't want to quote him, something to the effect of Hawaii hasn't had guns for 170 years and we don't want to start it now or whatever. And listen, he's the mayor and the city council is backing it. And these are our elected leaders. So again, I have to say from a personal level that if there were more people applying for concealed carry permits, for example, we have 1 million people or plus here on Oahu. If you have 600 out of 1 million that are applying for concealed carry and you're kind of weighing the balances as a leader of where the temperature of the water is, it's going to be a little bit challenging. But again, from a SHOPO standpoint, and Nick could chime in here, we want to make sure that our members clearly understand what their role is as a law enforcement officers as far as if calls for service come in these safe spaces and somebody actually does have a firearm in this area where they're not supposed to be.
Just an update. It is Bill 57 in the City Council. It completed second hearing. The vote was 6-3 on the council to advance. It'll go to a third hearing, another vote, and then we'll go to a full council vote. So there's still a little bit of process underway. And there is House Bill 984, which is circulating, which, by the way, has even more constriction and limitation on concealed carry. And so, Nick, your thoughts?
From the membership as the chapter chair, Steve's absolutely right. We've been watching and hoping that no matter what decisions are made, that they would be clear, that they would be easy to understand for law enforcement, that we would get exactly the training that we needed, and that there would be a partnership between the legislators and the department to make sure that things could run as smoothly as possible. And I think that's what we're looking for more than anything else. I know there's a lot of debate out there about it, but from a law enforcement perspective, we need the training from the department and we need the government to make up its mind on what it's going to do.
Steve, how do we connect with SHOPO?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Rick. And we haven't talked about that in several episodes, right? So please, listen, Rick, your listeners can come to shopohawaii.org. Come to the main platform. We just redesigned the website and we have it up. And from that platform, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
And we'll be back with the SHOPO Hour with brothers Nick, Steve, and Mark. Your telephone calls coming up at 521-8383. Welcome back. It is the SHOPO Hour on the Rick Amato Program, News Radio 830 KHVH. We have Nick in studio along with Steve and Mark, and your calls at 521-8383. I did a segment last week just lamenting how in my decades I've seen a shift in the aggressiveness, if you will, of drivers. And it's just, I know we all live with it, we all recognize it, but it was really remarkable. The statements from callers going, absolutely, this is absolutely nuts. Your members, our officers, are charged with managing and assisting in, let's all face it, dangerous areas. And it's traffic. And recently, we had an officer who was on traffic detail on the H3 that was very unfortunate in being struck and injured. I'm raising this up that if you'd like to update us in any way on the officer's condition, but I want to advance the idea that our public, you gotta rein it in, boys and girls. You got to be careful when you're driving. Stop with all this ridiculousness, because there are grave consequences to those actions. Gentlemen?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. So in my time in the department, there have been 5 officers who have passed in the line of duty. 3 of those 5 were traffic fatality involved. One of the primary responsibilities of the police department is to ensure the safe, speedy flow of traffic. It's one of the basic things that we do. It's unfortunate when things like this happen, and we're definitely in an era where people are a lot less patient and a lot less courteous in traffic than they should be. It's a difficult thing to enforce when you are short on officers, but we try as best as we can because we have other things that we have to do as well. But you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Steve?
Sure. Law enforcement in general is a dangerous profession. But I would put out to listeners, Rick, that if anybody's ever tried to change a tire on the side of the freeway, right? If you've ever had to experience that, especially in inclement weather or at nighttime, you realize really quickly that once you step out of your vehicle, you're in a completely different universe, so to speak. And when law enforcement has to do police services, whether it's traffic stops, traffic investigations up on the freeway or anywhere where you have other motorists trying to get somewhere in a vehicle that weighs thousands of pounds with speeds involved, it ramps up the danger of the job exponentially. And in this case, Rick, if you're alluding to one of our officers in that traffic collision, it's called a traffic accident for a reason. It's an accident, okay? And but again, it reminds us the dangers of what can happen when you get speed and vehicles and people up on the roadway, and you can have tragic and horrific events that occur from that. And Rick, if you wouldn't mind, when we talked about SHOPOHawaii.org, if I could just share with your listeners that both of our officers that were injured recently in the line of duty, we actually have a GoFundMe links on our website. So if you went to SHOPOHawaii.org, you're going to see pictures of the officers and their family. If you want to use a QR code with your phone, you can scan it that way. If you want to click on the link, we would really appreciate if the public would rally behind these 2 men and maybe show a little love for the family. It's there. And thank you again for that, Rick.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to transition, if you don't mind, and I'll start with Mark. There's been conflicting reports, and by that I mean in conversation, expressions, safe and sound, Waikiki. I know we discussed it in the installation of this policy, but I'd love to get an update. Safe and sound, yes, no, middle, good, bad, indifferent.
I don't know. The latest I heard with that is there's some type of glitch where it's taken forever to get because safe and sound, okay, you're arrested, you're not allowed to come back for, you get the geographic restriction, but something with either the courts or the prosecutor's office. There's a hang up in these guys staying out, right? Because we can't. There's a geographic restriction, right? Okay, you cannot come back, but us as officers cannot arrest, right? We make the case, send it to the courts. The courts have to deem, okay, yeah, can it be there? A warrant comes out, or the geographic restriction comes out. So there's a lag in these people coming back.
So there's no apprehension if there's a violation of geographic?
No.
Interesting.
No. So we have to make a report, goes to the court. The court deems, okay, yeah, and then it'll come out. So they're trying to fix that.
Interesting.
So just, they should have thought about that in the beginning, but
Waikiki at large. I know a lot of attention on this district for sundry reasons, but do we have a pulse? Have things improved? Are there more issues? Is it the same? And because if we do say it's the same, it's the nature of the proverbial beast. I mean, the concentration of residents, tourists is always going to be a challenge, but there is so much attention being paid and ramping up safe sound and other policies. How's Waikiki today?
Well, I think Waikiki is doing okay. I haven't worked there in some time, but I can tell you with respect to geo restrictions is what we call it, a slang term. But with geo restrictions, they're great to have, but there are some drawbacks to that. One, as the major said, if there's a lag in the processing of it, obviously there's a problem for enforcement there. The other kind of rough part about geo restrictions is that they're great if you live in the place that has geo restrictions, but if you live on the outskirts of it, that gets really rough. And my last patrol assignment, that's kind of exactly what we were suffering there. Was we were getting a lot of people who were being pushed out of one area, who just simply ended up in another, essentially causing the same trouble.
I remember when prostitution was quote unquote rampant in Waikiki, and then there were restrictions, basically geo as well. Sure enough, downtown, hello, where'd everybody come from? So the shifting, same with homelessness. There'll be one encampment moved, and then they'll appear in another. So it's like a shell game that is dealing with the symptom but not the cause. That's a fair statement.
I hope, obviously, with Waikiki, that's a work in progress, Rick. And I mean, I live in that area. I live in that community. So I would support anything that's going to recognize Waikiki as an area that, with the tourism hub and the money and everything that's gone on. We said this before. Look, the Japanese tourists are not going to put up with that. We can pretend that it doesn't affect, but it is. And not only for the tourists, but the residents that live there. So anything that's going to make Waikiki more safe. Again, people walk there at night. We want to remember that this community is different than certain neighborhoods in that people are not in their homes at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. If you go out in Waikiki at 11 or 12 o'clock, you still have kind of this bustling nightlife with people walking. So Waikiki does need to be treated a little bit differently. We call it kid gloves, whatever. And I'm glad that we're on the right track for that. And from the SHOPO standpoint, we want to make sure that the officers working in that district are given the tools to be successful. You can't give the police an assignment or a task and then hamstring them and tie their hands and not allow them to do their job.
Right.
So, yeah.
There we go. Mark, final thought before we take a break.
No, Waikiki's always been a challenge, right?
Yeah.
So it's just a matter of let's get the other side to help us, like Steve said. Judges, prosecutors, hey, help us out. We're doing our job.
And there you have it. At 7:45 in the morning already, time flying by. We'll use the remainder of our time wisely. We'll use it with you at 521-8383. Welcome back. It is the SHOPO Hour on News Radio 830. KHVH, Rick Amata program with you. Brothers Nick, Steve, and Mark in studio. Let's go to, and I hope I have your name correct. Is this Walina on Kauai? Walina from Kauai joining us. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you all. I just had a question. Is Hawaii going to put sky cops in so we can ticket and make more money for the state?
Sky cops. What does that mean, Walina?
Sky cops. It's what they got on the mainland for speeders and people that are breaking the law. on the roads.
Okay, let me, and thank you for the call and the question. I'll turn it over to the fellas. I'm not familiar, but Brother Mark?
Well, Lena, thanks for your call. However, we don't give tickets to make money for the state or the county, okay? We give tickets to stop people behavior on the roads. We don't make money for people. That's not our job. So, as far as the Sky Cops, I don't know. They're in foreign countries, like when I travel, and they're in other states. But I mean, I think we're doing it with they're doing it with the red light cameras now, right, or something.
Oh well,
So,
definitely we have that. But
Yeah.
I mean, they were back in the day. Is that what, like, in France, you see low flying aircraft? Is that what that is? You literally have airborne. I don't see what the purpose or advantage would be. Anyway,
Yeah, thanks for your call. I don't see or know of any future plans to use aviation, little bird helicopters, or small
Or
Cessna
drones.
planes to do any type of enforcement related to speed. I don't. If that's the question she's asking when she says Sky Cops,
yeah,
yeah.
I guess I'm not sure. I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, so the
before.
answer I would tell the caller would be not at this time.
Not at this time. There we go. Well, Lena, thank you for the call, though. I appreciate it. At 521-8383. I would like to just bring up one thing, and that has to do with Crime Stoppers. And I was wondering if you could relate to us the role of Crime Stoppers, the service that's provided, perhaps even share a little bit about the administration of this program and the overall effect here in our town and across the state.
Crime Stoppers is a very important feature of the department. It's manned primarily by volunteers with one supervisor, sergeant supervisor grade, in charge of the detail. They do all sorts of things. Not only are they actively promoting crime bulletins out there for the public to look at to try and help us solve crime, but they're also active in several other things as well. So they're really integral. They do help solve crime. They do take calls on a daily basis from people who want to give us tips and want to show us where to find people who are wanted.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's an integral part and driven primarily by volunteers. I think that's a great aspect to it, Steve.
Yeah, Rick, how do you go wrong with a partnership between the community and the law enforcement agency that works with the community like that? When you give the community the ability to assist in trying to keep their where they live safer, and the tips that come in and whatnot, everybody's seen the bulletin. I think it promotes cooperation. I think to Nick's point, we have apprehended individuals on high warrants. There is a success rate with this program. It's not just touchy-feely. I mean, it has a purpose. It is effective. And I think anytime you can bring law enforcement agencies, specifically at the city and county level, and have them engage with the community they serve, that's going to be a win however you look at it.
It's good stuff. Thank you for that. I was just curious of how the role and AOR. I want to follow up on something as we're chatting. At the beginning of your administration with you and Bobby, there were requests for uniform upgrades and even basic fundamental equipment that would help you and our officers on the street. Do we have an update? Are we moving forward?
Yes, actually we are. We are almost ready to field a field test of alternate uniform for officers. There's been a field test of an external carrier vest for officers as well. The department is definitely interested and enthusiastic about it. The hard part, I think, that's going to be tough for us now is not necessarily finding candidates to wear the uniform or the field test itself. It's the purchasing process that the county uses. You could choose the best uniform in the world out there, but unfortunately the purchasing method, the three bid lowest bidder system that the county uses is a bit of a roadblock.
And Rick, to answer your question directly, no, that has not been resolved. As Nick eloquently stated, it's a work in progress. We are enthusiastically hoping that this issue can get brought up and handled. Again, the load-bearing vest, this was all about giving our members the ability to wear a uniform that might be ergonomically better for their backs, their hips, and make their tour of duty easier on their body. What we do is already arduous enough. If there's anything that we can do to make the members' workday safer, more comfortable, we're gonna promote that.
There we go. Mark?
Yeah, I just want to go back to the Crime Stoppers thing, right?
Yeah.
So just so their listeners know, Crime Stoppers is a nonprofit organization that partners with HPD, not part of HPD. So HPD provides a liaison or a spokesperson, right, that coordinates volunteers, right? Mm-hmm. So and it's an awesome program. As a detective, I've used them many times, and I've got suspects from them many times. So, but they are not part of HPD. We have someone that liaisons and works with them.
Well put. Thank you very much for that. Finally, let's go to Steve out in Pearl City. Steve, I want to thank you very much for your call, and you are on the SHOPO Hour. And again, Steve in Pearl City, good morning.
Hi, good morning. Yeah, my question is about traffic enforcement, like specifically trucks in the left lane. I noticed that in the morning, going toward from the airport, headed toward Eva Way, there's a lot of large trucks in the left lanes. They don't seem to be. They don't have to move over to the right, or they're not being ticketed or warned or nothing. So I just wanted to know if that's something that's supposed to be enforced.
All right. Thank you very much for the call, gentlemen.
So I know where he's. Steve, thanks for calling. I could tell you're from the mainland, because on the mainland, trucks and buses are not allowed in the left lane for travel. But unfortunately, in Hawaii, we do not have that law. So that's why nothing's done about it.
Okay, Steve?
A couple other things. Thanks for the call, Steve-O. When it comes to these large commercial vehicles, the appropriate section to cite for violations is actually the Federal Motor Carrier Vehicle section. That has a lot of teeth. Currently, the prosecutor's office doesn't really have the ability to dissect that. And again, if we really want to go ahead and get more involved in the trucks and that enforcement, we have to start citing under the Federal Motor Carrier section. But right now, that is left specifically, most of the times, I should say, to the state inspectors that handle the weighing and such with the trucks. But is there an opportunity for improvement with that, Steve? Absolutely.
Steve, thank you very much for posing the question. We appreciate you joining us on the SHOPO Hour. Just a couple of minutes remaining, and I want to go back to Mark Critchio. Mark, you had a couple of thoughts before we go.
Yeah, just real fast. Everybody keep prayers in for Officer Gasman. He was involved in that East Street crash. Motor vehicle accident. He's had multiple surgeries. He's got a lot more to go. He's got a long road to recovery. So our prayers and our thoughts are out for him and his family. Mm-hmm. So, and then again, on the SHOPO website, there is a GoFundMe page. So do what you can for him.
There we go.
He worked for me for many years, so always a smile on his face. It's amazing. 4 kids, wife. We've got to help him out.
Amen. Brother Steve?
Hearing Mark speak, you realize how fragile life is. And you go to work, and you think your life, you're living in a certain reality. And then midway through your work shift, your life, your family's life, as you knew it before, is completely changed. And that's what Felix is going to be dealing with. So prayers, love, light to him. And again, if you folks want to contribute, shopohawaii.org, you're going to see the GoFundMe links. Please contribute if you desire. Thank you.
How is our officer who was attacked and his squad car taken?
Apparently, from what I understand, Rick, he is on the road to recovery a little bit quicker than Felix. Okay. We anticipate a return to duty for this officer, and it's going to be a process, but we feel that Nakia will be able to return to work.
Great. Nick, couple seconds. Any thoughts before we go?
Yeah, thank you. Those of us in the law enforcement profession, sometimes we tend to take things out of context, and we don't necessarily remember that every day is a dangerous day and that things can happen. So to the listeners out there who are in the profession, please just stay safe and be careful. And for those of you out there who are listening who are not in the profession, please appreciate your police officers for the work that they do and the risks they take.
I want to thank brothers Nick, Steve, and Mark. It is the SHOPO Hour. Gentlemen, can't wait till the next time. Thank you.
Hey, Brother Rick.